This happened about 2 years ago. I went on a winter retreat with a few teachers from my school. We thought it would be fun to unwind after a stressful semester. The cabin was deep in the woods, surrounded by tall, snow-covered trees. The first night felt calm. I felt good as we settled in. Little did I know, everything would change. We gathered around the fireplace, sharing funny stories and laughing. It felt normal at first. Then I noticed a draft. The windows rattled. I shrugged it off. "Probably just the wind," I said. It was then I heard a scratching noise outside. I dismissed it, thinking it was just an animal. When morning came, I walked outside. I saw footprints leading away from the cabin. I wasn't sure if they were ours or something else's. The others laughed about them. I felt uneasy, but I didn't say anything. They started talking about seeing flickering lights in the windows at night. I thought maybe they were just tired, so I kept quiet. The second night was different. I kept hearing that scratching again, louder this time. We were sitting by the fire. I tried to joke, but I could see nervousness in my colleagues' faces. One by one they started to slip away after dinner. "Just going for a walk," they said. Hours later they returned with wild looks in their eyes. They didn't look like themselves. I felt an uneasy tension in the air. It felt wrong. I could hear whispers coming from outside. I thought I was imagining it. Then Sarah disappeared too. That's when fear gripped me. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I ventured into the woods, my boots crunching in the snow. It was dark and my heart raced. "Sarah, Tom, where are you?" I called. No answer. Just cold silence, and that scratching was now deeper, like something was digging. Something moved in the shadows. I froze. I whispered, "Is anyone there?" Nothing. Then, clear as day, I heard a voice. "Mark." My breath caught in my throat. I turned, and that's when I saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, but it was blurry and dark. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. I stepped back, heart pounding, ready to run, but before I could, it vanished. I felt dread wash over me. I was alone in the freezing darkness, the woods silent again. Panic set in. I knew I had to get back to the cabin. I turned around and ran. I noticed the footprints again as I sprinted. I realized they had surrounded the cabin. They weren't ours. When I reached the door, my hands were shaking. I pulled it open, gasping for breath. Inside was empty. The fire was now just embers. No one was there. Nothing but echoes of whispers remained. I still wonder what I saw that night and where my colleagues went. I don't think I'll ever forget that winter retreat. It still haunts me. The silence inside the cabin felt heavier than the snow outside. I closed the door behind me, letting out a shaky breath. I scanned the room, half expecting to see my colleagues sitting quietly, staring at the flickering fire. But there was nothing. The emptiness answered back, echoing my fears. I walked gingerly to the fireplace, poking at the ashes with a stick. My heart raced with every creak of the floorboards. I felt like I was being watched. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cold in the cabin. I grabbed my phone, realizing it was no use. There was no signal here. "Great!" I muttered to myself. That's when I heard it again, the scratching. It was back, just outside the door this time. My legs froze. I wanted to believe it was just an animal. But as it grew distinct, it felt more deliberate. I didn't want to confront whatever was out there. Gathering my courage, I moved to the door and slowly turned the knob. My pulse quickened. The door opened with a creak that raised the hairs on my arms. I peered into the open darkness. "Hello?" My voice quivered. No response, just the whisper of the wind. I decided to venture out once more, against my better judgment. My instincts screamed at me to stay inside, but I had to know. I had to find Sarah, Tom, and the others. Stepping out into the cold, I scanned the surroundings, my breath forming clouds in the frosty air. The sense of foreboding hung heavy. Suddenly, I noticed something unusual near the edge of the porch. A small object half buried in the snow. I knelt down, brushing the snow away. It was a pendant, glimmering softly in the moonlight, etched with strange symbols. I recognized it. It belonged to Sarah. Panic gripped my chest. I turned it over in my hands, wondering how it had ended up here. The scratching resumed, now closer, more insistent. I jumped up, the pendant slipping from my fingers, landing silently in the snow. I backed away, back toward the door, my breath quickening. That's when I saw it again, shadows moving between the trees. More figures. They weren't just lingering, they came closer. My heart pounded, and all thoughts of being brave fled. "Mark!" I heard someone call, but it wasn't Sarah's voice. It was deeper, more menacing. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I turned and bolted inside, slamming the door behind me. The cabin felt like a trap now. I could hear them outside, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. The scratching intensified, coming from all sides. My heart raced. They were waiting for me. Suddenly, all light seemed to vanish. The embers in the fireplace flickered, then went dark. A chill swept through the air, and I realized with horror something was inside the cabin with me. I fumbled for my phone, praying for even a flicker of light. But there was nothing. Darkness surrounded me. It was then I heard breathing, low and heavy, right behind me. I turned slowly, heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't alone. "Who's there?" I whispered, fear coursing through me. The response was a slow, mocking laugh that sent chills down my spine. I held my breath, sensing every heartbeat reverberating in my ears. The laughter echoed, chilling me to the bone, and I felt a weight, a presence, lurking just beyond my sight. I backed further into the room, bumping into the back of a chair, knocking it over with a loud crash that broke the chilling laughter. "Show yourself," I shouted, desperately trying to sound brave. My voice wavered, betraying me. The shadows seemed to swell, darkening the corners of the room. I squinted, searching for any hint of movement. Then a rustling noise came from the far side of the cabin. It was followed by a soft whisper, unintelligible, but unmistakably close. My gut twisted as I took a cautious step forward, drawn towards the source. I was too curious, too afraid to resist. Behind the couch, I spotted something glimmering. I knelt down, straining to see through the darkness, and brushed against a small pile of items. A flashlight. I grabbed it and clicked the switch. A feeble beam of light broke through the shadows, illuminating the space in front of me. The beam danced around the cabin, but my heart sank as my gaze fixed on the dirty floor beneath the window. Fresh marks traced in the dust formed a clear message. "Leave now!" Panic surged through me, and I jerked the flashlight back, scanning the edges of the room once more. That was when I saw it. A figure, unnaturally tall, silhouetted against the window. Its outline shifted, twisting as it moved. My breath caught in my throat as it turned, eyes glowing an eerie yellow in the beam of my flashlight. "Help us!" it rasped, the sound almost drowned out by the howling wind outside. I stumbled backward, almost falling over. My grip loosened on the flashlight. Panic seared through my mind. I didn't want to engage with this, whatever it was. "Get out!" I shouted, the words tumbling from my lips in a frenzied rush. The figure's glowing eyes narrowed, and I could see the details more clearly now. Its face was obscured, but it bore a grotesque semblance of a human form. The scratching noise returned, but this time it was inside, scraping against the walls like fingernails clawing for escape. I turned, looking for an exit, but the cabin felt like a prison. Chills ran down my spine as the figure stepped closer, creeping toward me with an unnerving calm. I swung the flashlight toward the door, debating my chances. If I ran, would it chase me? Would the whispers outside grow louder, become real? Confusion overwhelmed me. "Where is everyone?" I muttered frantically. The figure paused, tilting its head. "They are lost. You must find them." That voice clawed at my mind, mingling with distant memories of Sarah, Tom, and the others. I couldn't leave them behind. But just as quickly as it spoke, the figure rushed toward me, the air around it warping as it flickered in and out of focus. I stumbled back, adrenaline surging, and then I spotted the pendant I had dropped earlier, gleaming in a patch of moonlight just outside the shadows. I lunged for it, instincts kicking in. If this thing wanted to keep me here, I had to take a stand. Just as my fingers curled around the pendant, the figure let out a screech that shattered the silence, reverberating in the cabin like an alarm bell. I had to escape. I had to find my friends. But the cabin felt like it was collapsing around me. I ran for the door, heart racing, with the eerie glow of the figure lingering in my peripheral vision. The whispers intensified, echoing my name. I felt a hand grip my shoulder, cold and unyielding. I turned, ready to fight whatever this was, but then everything went dark. I woke up, gasping for air. The dark cabin was gone, replaced by the pale light of dawn filtering through cracked curtains. I blinked, my mind hazy. Had I really fallen asleep, or had the figure? A wave of nausea rolled over me. I pushed myself off the floor, heart racing, feeling around for the pendant. My fingers brushed against it, cold and reassuring. I clutched it tightly, trying to ground myself. The cabin was eerily quiet now, devoid of laughter and whispers. I dared to glance out the window. The snow lay heavy, blanketing the ground outside, reflecting the morning light. But my friends, did they make it out? Were they out there, lost in this white expanse? I took a shaky breath, scanning the room. The atmosphere was still. The figure had vanished, but I could feel its presence lingering like a ghost in the air. I needed to find my friends, but how? I stepped toward the door, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a distant warning. Pushing it open, I found my breath hitching in my throat again. Each footstep crunched in the snow, breaking the eerie stillness that filled the forest. "Tom! Sarah!" I called out, my voice cracking. I felt foolish, chasing after shadows, but I had to try. The hollowness of the forest engulfed me. Trees loomed like soldiers watching my every move. Then, movement caught my eye, a flash of red deeper in the woods. I squinted, barely making out a figure in the distance. My heart leapt. "Sarah!" I rushed toward it, pushing aside branches and snow-laden brush. But as I drew closer, I froze. It wasn't Sarah. It was a deer, startled by my presence, darting into the trees. Panic surged again. I turned in circles, my breath clouding in the crisp air, the trees standing like silent witnesses to my growing fear. Where were they? That's when I heard it, the soft, unmistakable whispers returning, barely audible yet echoing around me. "Help us!" A voice beckoned, sounding eerily familiar. My pulse quickened. The voice was closer, calling out from somewhere beyond my sight. I hesitated, straining to hear more. The wind shifted, carrying fragments of the words on treacherous currents. "This way. Lost." It urged me forward, deeper into the heart of the forest. "Please," I shouted back into the emptiness. "Where are you?" There was silence, followed by a low, reluctant laugh drifting through the trees. I took a step back, fear coiling within me. What if it was the figure? What if it wanted to trap me again? But I couldn't abandon them. I couldn't let whatever had taken them keep me from trying to find them. I turned in the direction of the whispers, my heart a mix of dread and determination, and pushed on. With each step, the whispers grew louder, merging with the wind. I felt drawn to them as if they were guiding me. Then suddenly, a crack in the trees exposed a clearing. My breath hitched. Would I find them, or had they met a fate I couldn't fathom? Just inside the clearing, I caught another glimpse of movement. I squinted again, desperate to see, but instead I stumbled over something half buried in the snow. I fell forward, gasping in surprise. And then I froze at what lay beneath the ice, the unmistakable shapes of clothing. My heart dropped. The pieces of my friend's things were scattered in disarray, buried but unmistakable. This was worse than I thought. I dug my fingers into the snow, brushing away the ice, coating the fabric. A red scarf, Sarah's favorite. I swallowed hard. This couldn't be happening. Where were they? I rose, scanning the area frantically. My heart beat faster in my chest and adrenaline coursed through my veins. A sense of urgency gripped me. They were close. I could feel it. Suddenly, the whispers swam back into my consciousness, clearer now, almost frantic. Help us. It was almost as if they were calling for me. I wondered if they were somewhere nearby, maybe trapped or hurt. Maybe even lost. I knew I couldn't stand still any longer. My feet moved almost of their own accord, leading me further into the clearing. Each step felt more decisive, purposeful. But the further I moved, the stronger the feeling of being watched grew. It settled into my bones, prickling at the back of my neck. "What is it?" I whispered, halting as I felt the weight of unseen eyes. A low rustle in the underbrush sent me stumbling backward. "Who's there?" The forest responded in silence. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay put. I needed to think, then I heard it. A faint cry blending with the wind. I rushed towards it, my focus laser-sharp. "Tom! Sarah!" I shouted again, but this time I infused more determination into my voice. "Where are you?" The cries came again, more insistent. They swirled around me, sounding closer as I advanced deeper into the woods. I pushed through the underbrush, the cold air licking my skin. Then I saw something, a shadow darting between the trees. I called out again, desperate to reach them, but as I pursued the shadow, it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "No, no!" Panic swelled within me, and I stumbled through the thicket. It felt like a trap, as if the forest itself was playing games with me. "Come back!" I yelled, voice thick with emotion. "Please!" There was a rustle behind me. I turned quickly, searching for signs of movement, but only the whispering wind answered. In my gut, I felt a disquieting chill. Whatever lingered in these woods, it wasn't just searching for my friends. It wanted me too. And in that moment I understood. I had to stop floundering in fear. I had to choose, continue chasing shadows or confront whatever darkness held them captive. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself. I would face whatever I had to, but I needed a plan. I scanned the ground once more, noting the trail of clothing, but it didn't lead in the direction of my friends. It was another path altogether, leading deeper into the billowing snow. That's when I noticed a glint, something metallic, partially buried. I crouched down and brushed away the snow. My breath caught. It was a locket, one I recognized from Sarah. It lay there strangely pristine against the white, like a beacon of hope. I turned it over in my palm, feeling the weight of it. Before I could react further, a sharp gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying the whispers and laughter away. The cold settled heavier on my shoulders. "Help us!" My blood ran cold, and chills danced on my skin. Whatever was out there was growing bolder, and so was my fear. I stood, clutching the locket tightly. I couldn't keep running. It was time to confront this darkness head-on, but as I turned to retrace my steps, the shadows morphed around me. I wasn't alone. Someone was watching me again. I took a shaky step back, gripping the locket tighter. The shadows shifted, forming shapes that danced just beyond my sight. I felt a terrible urge to run, but I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. "Who's there?" I called again, my voice trembling despite my efforts. Silence hung in the air, thick and oppressive. My heart pounded as I scanned my surroundings, searching for the presence that seemed to loom over me. And then, as if answering, a figure stepped into view from between two trees. It was a girl, maybe a little older than me, dressed in a tattered coat that was too big for her. Her hair was wild, a cascade of dark curls framing her pale, frightened face. I squinted, trying to make sense of her sudden appearance. Are you lost?" I stammered. The girl's eyes widened, darting nervously back into the trees. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered harshly, her voice a mere breeze. They'll find you too. Who will? My eyes glanced nervously over my shoulder. I felt the shadows closing in, the air thickening with an unnameable fear. Please, she begged, taking a step closer. You have to leave. It's not safe. The urgency in her voice pierced through the haze of confusion in my mind. They want the locket. You shouldn't have picked it up. I glanced down at the locket cradled in my palm. This is Sarah's, I murmured, my thoughts racing. I need to find her and Tom. They're out here somewhere. The girl shook her head, panic flashing in her eyes. You don't understand. They'll use it against you, she replied. Who are they? My voice rose, frustration mingling with fear. What are you talking about? In that moment, the ground beneath us trembled slightly, almost as if the earth itself responded to her words. I felt it, a low rumble, like the distant growl of thunder. But there was no storm. We have to go, she urged, her voice taut with urgency. Now! Before I could react, the girl turned and bolted into the woods. Instinct kicked in. I dropped the locket and chased after her, propelled by both fear and doubt. Wait! Don't leave me! I shouted. But the forest swallowed my voice, the wind howling so loudly it was as if the trees themselves were screaming. We navigated through the thick branches and snow, branches scratching my skin as I kept pace. She moved with a speed and agility I struggled to match. Stop! Please! I gasped out. Suddenly she paused, throwing a hand behind her to stop me. We came to an abrupt halt at the edge of a small clearing, and in that moment I caught my breath. In front of us, a figure loomed, shadow stepping out from the very heart of the darkness. It was a tall figure, wrapped in an eerie cloak, featureless and faintly shimmering. Its presence cast a palpable dread, the air turning icy as it gazed at us, with an intensity that froze me in place. It's looking for the locket, the girl whispered, her voice shaking beside me. We need to hide, now! Just then the figure raised a hand. In an instant, the shadows stretched, crawling toward us like tendrils seeking to ensnare. I looked at the girl, eyes wide in terror, and saw my own fear reflected back. Then everything went dark. My heart raced as I groaned, feeling the cold ground beneath me. I blinked, trying to gather my thoughts. The darkness around me was thick, but it felt different. It caressed my skin rather than stifling me. I pushed myself up to sit, the chill biting through my clothes. Where are you? I whispered, trying to find the girl in the black void. My voice barely echoed, swallowed by the heavy silence. Panic surged through me. Had the figure caught her? Over here. Her voice came from somewhere close, and I turned toward it. Relief washed over me. I'm okay. She sounded shaky, but alive. We have to move, I urged, the fear still gnawing at my insides. What was that thing? It was the Shadow Warden, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It feeds on fear. It's drawn to the locket because of what's inside. What's inside? I asked, eyebrows knitting as I recalled the cold metal pressing against my palm earlier. She hesitated, and worry tightened my stomach. Memories, she finally replied. Powerful ones. Collecting them keeps it alive. Memories? I shot back, my voice rising involuntarily. What kind of memories? Why would it want... Before I could finish my question, the ground trembled again. The shadows shifted, thin fingers clawing at the edges of our darkness. Focus! The girl's voice snapped, pulling me back to the moment. We have to find a way out. Follow me. She took a step into what I assumed was the direction we'd fled. I scrambled to my feet and stumbled after her. The oppressive dark seemed to thicken, an unseen force pushing against us, urging us to turn back. We dashed through the void, listening for any sound that might indicate the warden was still on our tail. Each step echoed in my ears, and dread seeped into every corner of my mind. I had no idea where we were going or if we'd escape. Suddenly, a piercing light cut through the shadows ahead. It flickered like a distant flame, and instinctively I felt drawn to it. There! I shouted, pointing toward the glow. Don't! She warned, but it was too late. I surged forward, the light warm and inviting. The girl rushed after me, desperation in her voice. "Wait, it could be a trap!" I pressed ahead, curiosity overwhelming my caution. As I approached, the light illuminated a small wooden cabin within the clearing. It stood alone, weathered and covered in snow. The warm glow pulsed like a heartbeat, and a strange sense of hope swelled in my chest. I hesitated at the door, reaching for the handle. "Should we knock?" I asked, unsure if entering would be a mistake. "Maybe it's safe," she replied, though her tone was doubtful. "But just in case." Just in case. The words hung heavy between us, as if they meant we should be ready for the worst. I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the light bathed everything in an ethereal glow. And then, before my eyes, I saw a figure standing at the center, grayscale, almost translucent. It felt familiar, but the recognition twisted something deep within me. "Sarah," I whispered, my voice trembling with disbelief. As her gaze met mine, I barely had time to absorb the shock before the shadows outside surged once more. I felt it. The Shadow Warden was closing in. "Get back!" the girl hissed, grabbing my arm. "We need to leave!" But before I could react, Sarah reached her hand toward us, a mix of sadness and urgency in her eyes. And then I remembered the locket. The darkness behind us pressed in, a stark reminder of the danger. I was torn. The urgency swelled inside me, and I knew this was the moment everything could change. But which path would I take? I was still reeling from the sight of Sarah standing there, her spectral figure a ghost from my past. Confusion mingled with an aching longing as I looked from her to the girl beside me, who was still tugging at my arm. "Are you sure it's safe?" I murmured, glancing back at Sarah, whose eyes held a deep sadness. She seemed to want to tell me something, but the darkness loomed larger, vibrating with an ominous energy. "Now's not the time for sentiments," the girl insisted. "We have to go before it finds us." As if responding to her words, a menacing growl echoed beyond the cabin walls. It sent chills down my spine, the air crackling with dread. I could almost feel the warden's presence slithering closer, hungry for fear. The decision felt excruciating. I could step towards Sarah or follow the girl into the unknown safety of the forest. My eyes darted between them. "Sarah, please!" I called out, desperation creeping into my voice. "What do you want?" For a moment, her face flickered with intensity, as if she might break through to me. "You have to remember," she urged, her voice soft but firm. "The locket. It's the key." I took a step closer, drawn to her, but the girl yanked my sleeve. "We stay here, and we're dead." My heart thudded at the conflict raging within me. I needed to protect myself and the girl, but the connection to Sarah felt so real. "What do you mean the locket is the key?" "The memories will help you defeat it," Sarah said, her voice breaking as the shadows stirred outside. "But you must face them." "Face what?" My voice slipped into a whisper as dread settled deeper into my bones. Suddenly, the cabin shook. The door slammed shut behind us, and the light flickered like a dying ember. Outside, pressure mounted, and the presence of the warden was ever more palpable, a suffocating darkness demanding entry. "We have to go now!" the girl yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. I took one last look at Sarah. "I'll come back, I promise." My heart pounded with guilt as I felt the girl's grip pulling me away. Outside, the snow was eerily still, almost too quiet. The forest loomed like silent watchers, dark and foreboding. "Which way?" I stammered, my brain racing. I felt a push from behind, a gust of wind carrying the stench of dread. "Over here!" she shouted, darting along a narrow path. Reluctantly, I followed, keeping my gaze on the shadows behind us. I could almost feel the warden's fingers brushing my back, urging me to turn and succumb to fear. The trees closed in around us, their branches twisting like skeletal hands. Each step away from the cabin sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. I stole a glance back, hoping to catch another glimpse of Sarah, but only shadows swirled in the cabin's wake. Then everything went dark. Before I could question why, a piercing scream split the night, echoing like a warning. "We're not alone," I gasped, the realization dawning as footsteps crunched through the underbrush. Fear clawed at my throat. Someone was in the forest with us, and they weren't friendly. I gripped the girl's arm tightly, trying to steady my breath. The footsteps were getting closer, crunching through the snow with a rhythmic purpose. It felt like something, or someone, was hunting us. "Keep moving," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, but every instinct screamed at me to turn and confront whatever was out there. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was too late to run. As we slipped deeper into the trees, shadows wove through the trunks like dark tendrils. I fought to focus on my surroundings, but my mind was a whirlwind of questions. The locket. Why was it the key? What memories did I need to face? Then I heard it again, a low growl that sent a shiver racing down my spine. We stumbled onto a small clearing, moonlight filtering through the branches overhead, illuminating patches of snow like forgotten memories. The girl tugged me toward a thick tree, its trunk gnarled and ancient. "Here!" she hissed. We crouched behind it, pressed against the rough bark, and I tried to quiet my breathing. "What do we do?" I whispered, scanning the clearing for any sign of danger. "We wait," she said, her eyes darting. "If we're quiet, maybe it will pass." In that moment we heard it, a rustling sound, low and deliberate, coming from just beyond the tree line. "Do you think it saw us?" I asked, my voice trembling. She shook her head, but the worry in her eyes told me she wasn't sure. We held our breath, the world around us sinking into an eerie stillness. After what felt like an eternity, the rustling stopped. The unsettling quiet began to gnaw at my resolve. Then out of the shadows stepped a tall figure, its outline jagged and blurring at the edges. My heart dropped as I realized it was humanoid in shape, yet something about it felt wrong. Its limbs were too long, movements too jerky. "What is that?" I whispered, my pulse quickening. "I don't know," the girl replied, her voice barely audible. The figure turned its head, and even from a distance I felt its gaze bore into me, an icy chill washing over my skin. My instinct screamed to flee, but I was rooted to the spot. Suddenly, it lunged forward, darting toward us with unnatural speed. "Run!" she yelled, breaking the spell. We sprang from our hiding place, racing in the opposite direction. The trees blurred as we rushed past them. I caught a glimpse behind us. The thing was close, its growl echoing in the night. A horrifying sound that pressed against my eardrums. Panic fueled my legs, but fatigue began to set in. "Where do we go?" I gasped, desperation creeping into my voice. "Toward the river!" the girl shouted, her footsteps crunching beside me. "It's our only chance!" The ground began to slope downward, and soon we were racing along a narrow path. The river was just ahead. I could see the water shimmering under the moonlight, but dread filled me when I noticed the ice, a thin layer, glistening dangerously. As we neared the riverbank, I risked another look back. The figure was almost upon us, the brightness of the moon casting shadows over its twisted form. "Jump!" she yelled as we reached the edge. Without thinking, we leaped onto the ice, the surface cracking beneath our weight. That's when I saw it. A flash of white and gold caught my eye, half buried in the snow at the river's edge. It was the locket. My locket, the one Sarah had spoken of. I couldn't just leave it, but as I hesitated, something shifted behind me. The warden had arrived. Fear filled my chest, and I had to decide, grab the locket or save ourselves. I hesitated for only a moment, weighing the significance of the locket against the creeping dread of the figure behind me. It was a powerful pull, but I couldn't let it consume me. "We have to keep going," I yelled, tearing my gaze away from the golden glint that felt like it held the answers to everything. With a strong push, I sprinted across the ice, heart racing as it groaned beneath my weight, cracking ominously. The shadow of the warden loomed closer, its twisted form stretching toward us like a dark promise. "Don't look back!" the girl shouted, desperation anchoring her words. I fought every instinct to glance over my shoulder as we reached the opposite bank. I could feel the tension crackle in the air, the gnawing darkness rising behind us. We scrambled up the bank just as I heard a deafening crack. The ice splintered, and I shot through the snow to grab onto a tree trunk for balance. My chest tightened, breathless from the cold and panic. "Is it coming?" I wheezed, my eyes scanning the river. "I don't know," she panted, but we had no time to waste. We had to run, and fast. The forest's shadows felt alive, writhing and twisting to obscure our paths, as if mocking our escape. We ran until the darkness seemed to thicken around us, swallowing the sounds of nature. The whispers returned, urgent, tangled with dread. "Help us!" They echoed in my ears, wrapping around me like a shroud. I stumbled but pressed on, driven by a primal instinct to survive and find my friends. "Where are we?" I gasped, struggling to keep pace beside her. "Towards the clearing!" she yelled back, determination slicing through her fear. "We have to clear our heads. Trust me." Trust was hard when shadows gnawed at the edges of my mind, but I clung to her words like a lifeline. If we could get to the clearing, perhaps we could break free from the warden's grip. Just as I felt something shift in the atmosphere, a sudden wave of familiarity washed over us. The trees that once felt menacing began to blend into the scene before us, the clearing emerging like a beacon of light amidst a storm. We stumbled into it, panting heavily, our breaths mingling with the cold mist hanging in the air. Turning, I caught a glimpse of shadows merging at the forest edges, coalescing into the figure we had fled from. The shadow warden was relentless, prowling just outside the light of the clearing, its sinister intentions palpable. "Do you have a plan?" I asked, my heart racing in my chest. "Maybe," she replied hesitantly. "If we can harness what we feel, what binds us to our memories." I thought back to the locket, how Sarah mentioned facing those memories as the key to defeating this thing. I reached for it in my pocket, only to realize it was gone, a piece of me lost. But then something stirred in my mind. Images of Sarah, laughter ringing out over winter nights, warmth amidst the chill. I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing on her memory, her essence, everything that made us friends, hoping it would call her back. "He needs us to fear," I murmured, the revelation slipping from my lips. "But we can't give him that." A flicker of understanding gleamed in her eye. "Then let's face him together, show him the light of our memories." I nodded, determination swelling in my chest. We stepped forward, the darkness inching closer, but instead of retreating, we lifted our heads high. "You can't have us!" I shouted, my voice steady despite the chaos. "We will not be lost to you." The warden wailed, a cacophony that reverberated through the clearing, shaking the very ground beneath us. As we stood together, inviting our memories to flow, light began to seep from within, transcending into a radiant glow that illuminated the space around us. The shadows recoiled, twisting and blurring, as that warm light enveloped us. It was a fight fueled by hope, by camaraderie, a vivid tapestry of our combined pasts unraveling against the dark. As the warden lunged, the light radiated outward, growing brighter as our laughter and memories echoed around us, forming a barrier. It roared in frustration, but we stood firm, united. And then a sudden flash like a lightning bolt pierced through, swallowing the warden whole. Silence fell, the darkness echoing back into the void. In its absence, I dared to hope. But the relief was short-lived, as I felt a strange emptiness, a lingering void that hinted at questions still left unanswered. Were Sarah, Tom, and the others truly lost? Had we really freed them from whatever darkness plagued these woods? The clearing seemed to change, the atmosphere shifting like leaves in a breeze. The familiarity felt slippery, incomplete. I glanced back at where the shadows had been, but there was nothing. a void remaining that left echoes of unanswered questions in its wake. With a final look at the hollow woods, I turned back seeking the girl, but she too started to fade, becoming part of the ethereal remnants of the forest. "Stay strong!" she called out, the last words lingering as the brightness pulled her into a whirlpool of shimmering light, leaving me with mixed emotions. As I stepped back into the gentle stillness of dawn breaking through the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. Maybe I had escaped, but had everyone else? My heart raced with lingering fears. I moved through the remnants of winter, the woods now silent but alive in a way I could hardly comprehend. As daylight broke, I took a deep breath. While some answers remained lost, I felt a spark of determination unaffected by doubt. I vowed to find them. I had to. But every time I thought of them, I felt a chill run from my spine to my fingertips, as if the shadows within me were whispering their secrets, reminding me that the darkness lingers long after the light fades.